welcome to They Live by Film, a podcast for movie discussion and interviews from around the world. I am Zach Bryan again. Adam is still missing, but Chris is here, and we're talking about Von Trier, so it's still just the two of us. Just the two of us here. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. That was pretty good, man. I think it's very close to the intro that Adam uses.
Yeah, finally he'll think it's worthy of me to keep saying it, because I haven't went by script yet. I'm going by memory. I like listen to
You-
his like Irish voice in my head as I say it, and that's been doing okay for me.
do you listen to that as you go to sleep at night as well to help you go to sleep calmly?
No, I would have like an anxiety attack if I like had to listen to my voice for that long while I tried to sleep. I would just hate it. So no, unfortunately not. So, but yes, we
What,
are. If you guys are tired of listening to Von Trier, I just want you all to know we feel you. We're getting a little
yeah.
burned out ourselves. I think me and you have both said that at this point.
Oh man. You know what? There's nuance to this which we'll get into today, but yeah, just like, whew, man, he really, as his mental health started failing him, you know, you know what this period reminds me of a little bit. Speaking of depression and just feeling over like heavy from this period of his life. You know those artists that like I can't remember if it was Van Gogh or somebody. There's like a you can watch the progression of their mental health degrade and like the kind of paintings they do,
Yes.
like slowly get kind of more abstract and stuff. I almost feel, I mean, these films are all visually stunning. We'll get into it here in just a second. But like, I almost feel like he's pulling out this stuff from like deep inside of him, and we're getting these kind of really rare glimpses into some pretty severe, depression and kind of mental health issues. So it's heavy.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
and I think it lines up well, like when you listen to his interviews, like around this time of his "I don't give a shit" attitude about the things
Yeah.
he says, and it's like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I can kind of tell your mental health is like he doesn't say like I. He seems like he says things out of frustration. Like we'll talk about it a lot during Antichrist, and I understand his frustrations, like with the way the media treated him, like during the release of Antichrist. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
you can just like when there's this context in it, you're like, oh, I kind of see what's going on now. Like I can
Yeah.
see the issues going on.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I totally agree. Well, other than Venture, what have you been up to this past 2 weeks?
Oh well, I went to Philadelphia to go visit a friend for about 5 days. I don't really have anything exciting. This is like my third time I've been to Philadelphia. I don't even feel like a tourist at this point because I can properly operate the trolley system. So I
Okay.
mean, once you can do that, you're no longer a tourist. You're just there.
They let you
Um,
drive it?
no, just like get on it and not end up at
No,
the
I'm
wrong
sorry.
stop. Yeah, like I don't get
Yeah,
lost.
yeah, that's good. Did you do the Rocky thing or have you already done that?
Uh, I walked up the steps the first time I went because first time I went it was COVID, so the art museum where the steps lead up to is closed anyway. It was closed at that way anyway at that time.
Okay.
Um, so, but I have walked up the steps twice. I did not run them. It is really entertaining to like watch people give it their hardest to try to like run up there. And then halfway through, you can just tell they're winded and they're like, nah, I'll just walk it.
Well, I won't laugh too hard. That'd be me, but
Oh, yeah, it would be me too. But it is funny to watch. It's just like, yeah, I feel you, man. I feel you. It's why I didn't even try. But you got
That's
the
good.
Rocky statue. I do miss the days. I wish I got to go to Philadelphia when the funniest joke you could talk about was they suck so bad at sports they had to put a fake athlete on as a statue, but they
They don't
actually
have
won a
any
Super
real
Bowl now,
athletes.
so
Yeah, true.
can't do that anymore.
Who could though? It's that trophy would be. I don't even know who you would put on there though. Would you put Jalen Hurts? I mean, he's not really like a superstar.
Are you talking about like if you put a new statue up? I think Big Dick Nick Foles has a statue up there now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I mean, he won him a Super Bowl even as a backup.
Yeah, true, true, true.
Yeah, but I'm
Big
back
dick Nick.
home, so that's why we'll see how the dates align for all of this. But I'm back home now. I did have a quick story I wanted to tell people just because I thought it was really
Okay.
funny. I found out about it as soon as I got back. My mom a few months ago, like 5 or 6 months ago, was trying to remember for background. My mom is really into true crime stuff. Like she is hardcore into it. It is been given to me to a degree, but not to the degree she has it. She's the I watch ID channel all day type of woman. So, but and I live in a very rural area, and my mom grew up in a very rural area. So she's always been fascinated about rural crime, specifically stuff that was around that she was kind of around. I don't know if this case will mean anything to anyone else, but it was a nationwide case. Just as an example, the Jennifer Short case that was in like 2004. That was very close to where I grew up, so that was a big fascination. But my mom went to high school with this other case of these two brothers who ended up killing these three guys, and she went to school with them, and she went to school with the woman, because basically what it came out to, one of the brothers was sleeping with this married woman. They wanted to be together, and she kept saying, why don't you just kill my husband? And he decided to just do that with his brother and two other people. So he's currently serving like 3 sentences. And I know they said this was a funny story. It'll get there. So it gets funnier than these poor people got shot. But when I was looking up some stuff, because my mom wanted to know who it was, she could not remember their names. That my mom went to high school with these people, and she knew them and cannot remember their names. But that's
okay.
So she was like, "Could you figure out who it is?" I finally figured out who it was, and the guy's name was Ricky Brogan, and I can say that because he's an adult. He's been found guilty. I can say his name all I want to now. So thankfully, I'm not breaking any laws doing that. Him and his brother Terry killed these 3 people. I just wanted to read you the Supreme Court part where they are like summing up what the crime was. So this is a little long, but there's a part in here I like cracked up so much reading it.
Okay, can't wait.
She told him she wanted her husband killed so that she and Brogan could keep seeing each other because she was afraid her husband was going to find out about their relationship. He offered no testimony in his trips to the logging site above Ferrum on October 7th and 8th. He did testify, however, that he and Ricky Brogan went to the logging site around 8 a.m. on October 19th for the purpose of hunting. Later that day, they met and talked to Larry McGee, Dick McGee, and Jimmy Moran. And just to like editorialize a little bit, those are like the most rural names I've ever heard, like all at once, who were logging in the area. Terry Brogan then offered to assist Larry McGee in hooking cables onto the tree that had been cut. When Larry McGee pulled on a lever on the machinery used on the hooking, the machinery jumped and Terry Brogan's gun accidentally fired. McGee, with blood on his face, then ran towards Brogan. Brogan also testified, "The next thing I know, I don't know, I just shot him again." Like, it's like, I was just like, so you have this idea that you're like, yeah, I got scared and the gun went off. And I don't know, I just went up to him and shot him again. Like, that was the story you were going with. And I feel like that like sums up rural crime, like testimony better than anything I've ever heard. Like, it's like it got halfway to an okay like thing, and then it's like, nah, I just did it again. I don't know why. So that was my entertainment for today. I just needed to share it because it's going to be really depressing from here on out. So I thought I would start us out with something like that.
No joke. Well, I just found out we're recording this at night, and I just found out about two hours ago that I have to get up at, let's just say 5 a.m. I don't know exactly,
Oh,
and get to the airport. I'm in Toronto right now. I have to fly to Calgary, land at 10. Have a meeting at 12. That goes, let's say it's an hour, and maybe they'll want to go out to lunch. So let's say we're meeting this customer from 12 to 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
Then I figure out what to do with myself for a few hours, get back to the airport around 5:30 for a 7 o'clock flight, coming back to Toronto that lands at 1 a.m. because of the time change.
Oh my God.
And then I have a flight back to Austin that leaves at 6:30 a.m. on Friday.
And I feel like if any of these are delayed, it just like screws up your whole plan, because that seems kind of like a tight window.
Yeah, I would rather do, if any of these are going to get delayed, I would want it to be the one from 7 p.m. That gets in at 1 a.m. Because like, if I leave at 9 and get in at 3, I mean, that sucks. But like, then at that point, I'll just basically come pack my bags and, get to the airport or something, right?
Yeah.
Mm. So anyways.
Well, it's like I don't know if it's when I was in Prague, my trip back, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't know if 30 is the new 90, because I was like on a train for 12 hours, and then I slept at the airport for 5 hours, got on a 2-hour plane ride, then got on a 10-hour plane ride, got back on a train, went home, and all this is in like 36 hours. And I'm just like, why? Why did I do that?
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's just No, and I don't know how tall you are, Chris, since I've never met you in person. I'm a tall dude, so I hate airplanes. Like,
You share that with Ryan over at Disconnected. Y'all are the tall bunch. I'm not tall.
so you
Um,
can sit comfortably in a like an airplane seat.
yeah, my
That's
problem
so
is that
nice.
I'm wide. I have to stop getting wider because um, I'm less comfortable than I used to be. Um, but
And
height's
they
not
keep
the issue.
getting like, and the airplane seats just keep getting tighter together too. And I'm like, like the average American is getting bigger, right? Like taller and wider, and you're making the seats shorter. Like something's
And
not computing here, guys.
no, in fact, I don't want to get into it now, but I have a weird, for the people that are the big and beautiful people of America that are, let's call it over 300 pounds, 350 pounds.
Mm.
I honestly have no idea how you fly. Like, how do you, like, literally, how do you fly? I guess you buy two seats.
I know some will require you to. I don't know if all of them do, but I know several will. But you can't. It's not like you can move the seat. At least the ones I've been on. Maybe there's nicer planes, but it's not like you can move like the armrest up or anything. At least a lot of the ones I've been on, you can't. So you're
No,
just
I think
stuck.
commercial airlines you can move the the the
Who are
armrest
you
stuff.
flying with? I guess is the question.
No,
I'm poor. I'm
I
poor,
feel
so
like
I'm lucky if I
whatever,
get
man.
Spirit Airline and get like mugged.
By the flight attendant.
Yeah.
Um, no, man. I mean, just I don't know. I guess to be fair, 95% of my flying is at work, so we're just on American or United for the most part. But
Do you get business
uh,
class? I hate to get nosy. I'm just curious.
no, man. In
Oh
fact,
man.
my company is. I'm sure that this is happening with more than just mine. But they took away, they used to have a rule where any individual flight, so not total travel time, but individual flight that was over 10 hours, you would get business class, right?
Mhm.
I think the logic is just like it's a harder flight, right? You want a chance to sleep, rest, whatever, right? Because you're like going to meetings and stuff, right?
Mhm.
But they took that away. So, other than the CEO, who I'm assuming has a private jet, I mean, I don't know for sure. I guess there's a chance he doesn't, but other than the CEO, everybody else in the company flies coach, no matter how long the trip is. Um, which sucks because,
Not even coach extra like extra room, like just coach.
yeah, there's a way you can kind of try to sneak it in to get premium economy as long as it's like not too much more expensive. Like if you get, sometimes you have this deal where like if you book 6 months ahead of time, you can get like a good price on it or whatever. So you can kind of sneak it in, but it's not. I mean, it's not like that does much. You get an extra few inches or whatever, but. Yeah, no. This is not it's not luxury. And I'm staying in a town place suites, which is fine. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's totally fine. But I think when most people think of, consultants, we're flying business and staying in like the Hyatt downtown or the Hilton downtown or something,
I was
But
just sitting there
nope.
thinking like it's not a big deal, but this hotel room is absolute dog shit. Like not a big deal. Just wanted to know.
Yeah, it's not. I'd say it's like there's that whole brand of like that whole genre of hotels that's like not quite a motel and not quite a hotel.
Yes,
It's great for like if you ever have to pay for things by yourself. It's
like a
where
Four
most people
Seasons
end
type
up.
thing.
No, well, Four
Maybe not
Seasons is
quite.
no like Holiday Inn Express,
Oh yeah.
that whole kind of thing. So I happen to be at the Marriott is my where I get my points, but so I'm at the Town Place Suites. But I mean, it's fine. It's decent. One out of every four hotels I stay in, the carpet smells like it's mildewy, but
Wonderful.
three out of four don't, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you're just flipping a quarter a few times. So since you've been on like all these airplanes, or are you going to be? Have you been watching anything? Any movies on the?
Ooh, great question.
Eh,
So I have so Criterion Collection, the Criterion Channel has a cool feature where you can download movies and watch them without internet,
mhm.
which is great because I can watch them on airplane mode. So I'm using, for the film club we're doing, I'm using the this 1990 The Bronx Warriors is the movie we're going to be talking about in 2 days,
Yes,
or I guess when this episode drops, since it's dropping on Friday. So if anybody wants to come talk about an Enzo Castellari movie, that's a combination of Mad Max and The Warriors. That'll be a super fun conversation on this Friday, the 10th, um, over a Criterion conversation on Reddit. But I downloaded two other Castellari movies, so I'll be watching those on my different flights when I'm not sleeping. I try to sleep on planes when I can,
That
but
must be so nice. I can't sleep any travel. I can't do it. I envy
yeah.
you so much.
No, I think it's just a matter of my body just being like exhausted. Like I can't, I've too much traveling. I'm just kind of like I just give into it. What about you though? Have you watching anything?
Besides Absolute Depression, in between all of that, I've been watching the last Planet of the Apes trilogy in preparation for the newest one coming out Friday. Have you seen that last trilogy out of curiosity? Have you seen any Planet of the Apes movie?
Not only have I seen them, the original like seven or whatever.
Yeah, five, and then
There's
the
seven.
remake, and then the three.
Okay, five is it? Okay,
Yeah.
so the original five I've probably seen three times each.
Okay.
Um, and I'm quietly a huge fan of this franchise. They're just fun. Um, and the new ones I've seen all of them once, except for the this new iteration. I haven't seen. There was like that. Yeah, I guess you called it the trilogy. So I
Yeah, it's
saw
like the
that.
Caesar trilogy. Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I saw that. I thought it was great. And then I have not seen the new ones.
Well, the new one comes out Friday. So the Caesar trilogy is the one that just most recently came out. So they haven't made one in like 7 years.
Okay,
Um,
so I haven't missed that much. I'm only
no,
missing
no.
this.
Um, War for the Planet of the Ape was the last one they came out with, and I have distinct memories of when that was actually me and my girlfriend's second date. Is we went to go see
Uh,
War for the Planet of the Apes.
nice, nice.
So it holds a very special place, and much more of a special place than Spider-Man: Homecoming, which was our first date. I just think the Planet of the Apes movies are really cool. But no, I've been rewatching them, and it is wild to me. Like, I don't know if you've seen the new trailer for that fucking Mufasa trailer that came out through Disney, because that's what we needed was Mufasa and another live action
I
Lion
haven't.
King.
Wait,
Um,
sorry, 1 second. I didn't know this existed. So not only are they doing a live action Lion King, but they're specifically calling out Mufasa.
well, they've already done the live action Lion King, which it's not live action. It's called that. It's really photorealistic animation. They did
Sure, sure,
that
sure.
like in 2019, and now they're doing
Yeah.
Mufasa as like a prequel because that was a
Uh,
story we all needed. And the CGI, like they make such a big deal about how photorealistic it is. I think it looks like dog shit. And what's funny
no.
is I just watched War for the Planet of the Apes last night, which came out in 2017, and it
Okay.
looks so much better. Like they put
Okay.
like honestly like the CGI for Dawn and War is fantastic CGI. Like the amount of work they put into that. I mean, might be a hot take. Um, Gary Oldman was great in The Darkest Hours when he won an Oscar, as Winston Churchill. Andy Serkis
Mhm.
should have won it for War for the Planet of the Apes, and I will die on that hill. It is. It was a fantastic performance, and he didn't even get nominated, which is a tragedy. But yeah, so that's mostly what I've been watching. Those have been a nice in between these movies.
Anytime you talk about animation, I feel like we have to shout out to Seb. I know
Well,
he
he might
listens
agree
though.
with me that the the Lion King looks like dog shit on these new ones, not
Yeah.
the old one. The old one's great. I love the old movie. But yeah,
No, no.
yes,
What's his big stance that the animators are getting screwed, right? Because they're not getting like they're working him too much, and they're not paying for animation the way they were 10 years ago. So
yeah.
maybe new animation is bad.
Which like I know I'm walking into fire talking about like James Cameron, so I'll keep it short. Um, there's just really no excuse for like Disney. I know they need to get out things quicker, but it's like there was nothing more jarring than going to go see like the new Black Panther movie that takes place in the water and seeing a trailer for the Way of Avatar, the Way of Water, and being like, wow, looks like dog shit in comparison to that. And it's like just take more time. Like you don't have to crunch it. People will be appreciative of nice looking CGI.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't want to look at like I mean, Marvel movies used to not be that bad. I don't want to get into a Marvel conversation, but like the CGI used to look better. It used to look a lot better. And I feel like they're either rushing it or cheaping it out or doing both.
Well, Somebody who doesn't use animation unless he's purposely talking about how much he hates it is our
Yeah.
is our main man of the hour, Lars von Trier.
Which I guess we'll talk about some animal CGI at least. So, it'll all tie in. It'll all tie in a little bit. So I guess we'll start with the first one, which for you at home who's been keeping up with our order, we're going to actually be talking about a non-depressing one to start, which is the boss of it all. Which I really hate that title. I just want to know. I hated it every time it was said in the movie, but we'll get there. Let me actually pull up what the synopsis of this one's about. Let's see what Letterbox came up with for this. There it is. An IT company hires an actor to serve as the company's president in order to help the business get sold to a cranky Icelander. It's actually pretty accurate. Credit to them. That's actually a pretty good description. So, what is our what is this on? They shoot zombies. I'm sure it's on there. So what number is
Surprisingly,
that?
surprisingly enough, the cranky Icelandic gentleman was not enough to get it onto They Shoot Zombies. This is probably the only Buncher movie that's not there. They Shoot Pictures has it as 18,214.
It's fair.
Um,
Like I don't have a necessarily problem. What's it around?
Takashi Miike movie Gotsu, which I didn't realize Gotsu was so low. That's a crime. That movie's awesome.
I have not
Uh,
seen it. Cannot comment. I'm sure you've seen
I
every
think
Miike movie though.
I don't know about everyone. I've seen a fair share. I think you would love Gotsu if you're ever gonna watch one. 2016's Trolls.
Sure.
Um, I don't know if there's anything else here really. The Candy Snatchers there from
That's a
1973,
good
which is
movie.
something.
Candy Snatchers is good. If you
Yeah,
haven't seen it, Vinegar Syndrome put out a release of that. Like that was like
yeah,
probably one of their earliest releases that I can remember.
yeah,
Good movie
yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I have. Anyways, yeah, it was a super early one for them. So yeah, it's down there. Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Sure. Why not?
And funny enough, I've noticed that this is the first year they're doing this. As you get further down, I think my guess is that the Decalogue opened up. Because the Decalogue is like in the top 15 or 20, and I'm thinking
Hmm.
that opened up a technicality where they could have TV shows in here now. So, like, as you go down the list, if you really pay attention to this kind of thing, you've got like the Wind in the Willows TV show from 1983 that snuck in the 18,000s. So, anyways,
I mean
um,
that's a weird. I mean it's the same. It probably has the same problem like Letterbox does, where it's kind of random what they'll allow, sort of, and you just kind of go with it. Maybe it counts, maybe it doesn't.
yeah, what do you do, if there's a critic, you take their list and then like, they have Wind in the Willows up there. Do you just like not include it or, I guess they eventually decided to include it. So, anyways, okay,
Yeah, what'd you
Boss of It.
think? What'd you think?
So, uh, I told you I've been watching movies and kind of talking a lot about movies with this woman Holly. I mentioned her last time, and she
Mhm.
hates um, um, basically Von Trier. The really intense, sad kind of stuff. So this is one I was like, hey, you could actually watch this. It's like a normal movie, right? It's like so for anybody who's squeamish about Von Trier, who just doesn't like to be crushed under the weight of depression or um, troubled by sexual assault or watching somebody's life just get slowly taken away from them and the life from their eyes. All the stuff that is just casually in his films. This is an interesting little diversion for him. I don't actually know why he made this, but there's two interesting things I want to talk about that I learned in the behind the scenes. But before I get into it, and before we start to go into the too much depth, what about you? What did you think of this?
I liked it. Like I'll be honest, when we got to this Antichrist and Melancholia, it was kind of the one I was like, that'll be whatever. But I had a pretty good time. Like I think it'll probably be evident. We'll see. I kind of feel like this is going to be our shortest section, maybe all together. Like for everything, I'm not sure how much depth is really in this. Uh, but to watch Von Trier do comedy is fascinating because I don't necessarily think he has a inclination towards it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun seeing an outsider kind of tackle that in its own sense. I would be. This is one of these times where this is probably blasphemy to many. I would not mind there to be like an American or whatever remake done by someone who has like a more inclination to comedy, because a lot of the stuff I found funny, I was like, this could have been funnier. Like
Yeah, no,
with the
for
right
sure.
editing and the inclination towards comedy and things like that. I think about just a comedy director in general, like doing this type of premise, because it's a funny premise. Like it's enjoyable. There's not really a part where I'm just, the only thing that's kind of odd is like, we'll get into it, but like there's a punch early in the movie and they still kind of do like the more realistic sound design for that, and you're like, oh, that was kind of brutal for that scene. But it
True,
kind of
true.
works on itself. It's still Von Trier. So yeah. So tell
I
me a little bit about the behind the scenes here. I'm curious.
I will, but just for the sake of maybe calling it out briefly. So, I think the premise here is funny, right? So there's a guy who runs a company who hires an actor to come in and pretend to be this kind of boss because they're about to go through like a really tough time at the company and he needs someone to blame it on, right? So I think the thing that worked well in this movie for me was you see this, actor, I guess, come in and pretend to be a boss, and it's an IT company, and he doesn't know anything about IT, so he's struggling and kind of floundering and fumbling, and the guy who runs the company is not helping him at all. He's just giving him platitudes like, "Well, it's good you're so smart," then all this kind of stuff. Um, but um, as the movie goes on, there's a good tension. I think maybe this is what you meant, or part of what you meant. But like, if this was in the hands of a very funny writer, it could be quite good because there's this interesting tension where the boss, so there's like the owner. Let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, there's like the owner and the boss, right? And so the boss is like the fake, like the actor who's hired to be the boss, right? Um, and the owner is trying to pass the blame and the buck to this guy who's coming in from the U.S., even though he's fluent in Danish. Um, and over time, the boss starts to shift the blame back to him in some funny ways, and so they get into this little kind of back and forth about where the blame sits. And there's some good comedy in that. Um,
And what
to me,
makes it even better is he is like, the guy who's the actual owner has kind of faked who the boss was in emails to all these people, so every one of them have a different idea of
that's
what the
right.
boss
That's
is
right.
like, and that
That's,
becomes such a big thing because obviously he can't pretend to be all these people in a boardroom.
right, right. Yeah, like he told him, one of the women in HR, he told him he's gay, right? So he has to act out being gay, and yeah. No, there's like good comedy bones, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I,
Um,
and I don't want to sit here and say he did a bad job in the movie because I still laughed. Actually had a pretty good time watching it, but I'm just
mhm.
like, there's more juice to squeeze out of here that I
Yeah.
don't think he quite did. It isn't like Airplane, which has like a joke every half second. It's not that type of thing. It's more like it's a kind of a slow build to a lot of the punchlines,
Yeah.
very slow sometimes a little meandering, but that's fine. It kind of has more of a, I don't know if I'd call it British comedy or not. Like it's a little bit slower, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what Danish comedy's like.
the Nordic countries and Denmark, I don't know for sure if they're part of that Nordic countries, but so that region, like Northern Europe, um, they have some really funny comedies, man. Have you ever seen Cloven? It's Klown.
I have not.
Okay, I don't know if you would like it or hate it. It's one of these ones where it really leans into like awkward situations, and but like it's extreme. Like the guy, it's basically the joke of the whole movie is that this guy is kind of continually accused of being a pedophile, and but like
That sounds
he's
basic.
yeah, like he's innocent, and it's clear that he's innocent, but he's just kind of an idiot, and he gets himself into situations with this kid that everyone's like, what is going on? So yeah, the Nordic countries and like Denmark and stuff, they have a really kind of dark sense of humor in some of their comedies. So anyways, it's just different. But I know what you mean. Trying to say, is it like British or something? It feels different than the U.S. comedies for sure. Just one quick thing I was thinking about before we dive into some of the behind the scenes stuff. I was thinking a little bit about when we were going through Kubrick, and we were saying like, the guy just decided to make a comedy and he makes like the best comedy ever made.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think Von Trier is capable of that flexibility between genre.
No, he has a wheelhouse he excels in,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
appreciate him going outside of it.
Sure, sure, sure,
Yeah,
sure,
but
sure.
yeah, it's not like, yeah, Kubrick was whatever he set his mind to, it was probably going to be great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they differ in that way. But there's two things that I thought were super interesting about the film. So one is there is so there's a lot I don't know about Danish cinema. I'll just go ahead and say that. Um, but in one of the featurettes on the Curzon set, which again I'm super conflicted on because freaking Curzon didn't have subtitles for Antichrist, which would have been a great movie to have
Oh,
subtitles
they
on.
did. It's Italian, and there was
That's
another
true.
one. It was non-English subtitles, and I was like,
That's
okay.
true.
And it's two
That's
random
true.
countries. It's not like they had like 10 other countries. They were like, let's throw a dart at a map and see which subtitles we're going to include. And they like missed the board on the third dart.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. And it's so random because then Melancholia did have English subs but did not have Italian. So there's no continuity at all. Um, but anyways, so Boss of It All, because it was not in English, they had English subs, which was good. But they also, to their credit, they also had like really good special features actually. So one of them is a documentary that's I don't even know, it might be an hour long. I didn't watch all of it. But it's about this community that Von Trier and Thomas Vinterberg built in Denmark. And so there's essentially like, if you think of it like a studio system that they built themselves,
Mhm.
and they produce TV and movies locally. So like a lot of stuff that is not playing in Cannes and stuff, but it's just like local productions. And they have like a staff, and they have like Dancer in the Dark was shot in this sort of studio, and it's a huge lot, and they have a sound stage, which is where Dogville was shot, but they also have like smaller sound stages, and they have a lot of modern equipment, and they're always kind of testing and tinkering, and it's cool. I think it's called Film Bruin, I think, or something like that. But it's just this really. Next time I go to Denmark, I want to go check it out. I don't know if they do tours, but it just sounds like this little kind of haven for filmmakers in Denmark, which sounds great. Had you ever heard of that before? I had no idea.
No, it's interesting to me, and I think it's because where he does so many movies with American actors and with like English speaking movies, you kind of forget like probably how much he does for the Danish film community. Like it's
Yeah,
probably a lot, and
yeah,
it's good
yeah.
to hear those things. I don't think it gets brought up enough.
Yeah, he's a conflicting character for sure.
Yeah.
Well, especially with, is it, so basically it's the foundation for Zentropa, right? Which is kind of like
Hmm.
their production studios, right? Um, it's also confusing because, his business partner is this guy named Peter Jensen, who's been accused by 9 women, I think, of sexual harassment as of today.
Wow,
So
thanks. That's wonderful. Like,
So like he just kind of controversy just kind of follows Ventura, right? And so that kind of further tarnishes his reputation, right? Because he's like him and this Peter Jensen guy, they're like thick as thieves. Like they do everything together, right? They
we couldn't even get through the boss of it all without some controversy. Couldn't even get
exactly
that far.
exactly. I when the I have a hunch though. I don't think that Curzon records new stuff because Ventura looked a little bit young in some of the features. So I think this is probably something that's like been ported over from the DVD,
Mhm.
would be my guess. And the interesting thing is, I don't think they didn't have any mention of Peter Jensen being this kind of predator. It was just purely how he was like playful, and he was like, even though he was the guy with the money, he was kind of like the clown of the group. Like one of the big things he did for promoting Antichrist in Cannes was like, Ventura was on the panels, like promoting it and doing interviews and stuff. And this Peter Jensen guy like dove naked into a fountain. So he's like I don't know, he's just a weird dude. But he has a lot of money. And anyways, so that. one interesting tidbit from behind the scenes for the boss of it all. But the probably more interesting thing to me was a basically he invented um, and I don't really fully understand it. So I'll just say it like as it was told, and there's a lot of questions I have that were not answered. But he essentially, if you can imagine a camera mm, rack, okay, where
Okay.
it's like instead of it just being on a tripod, it has a tripod, but then it has like a track that goes horizontal to the ground. Okay,
Okay.
so it goes wait horizontally, yeah, like it lays flat, so it's basically parallel to the ground, right?
Mhm.
And let's say the track is 6 feet long, okay, maybe
Okay.
8 feet long. It's a big track, okay. And what he did for Boss of It All, and then what he did for Antichrist, and I have not confirmed for Melancholia, but I'm almost sure he didn't use it for that for different reasons we'll get into. But um, he programmed essentially like it's not quite AI, but it's basically like an algorithm that's a random number generator, and the numbers represent different positions of the camera. So he did this thing where he took control of the cinematography away from the cinematographer.
I'm sure the cinematographer loved that.
Well, he's the cinematographer for a lot of his movies, right?
Oh, then yeah, I guess he does love that then.
I don't exactly. I think he does love it. I don't know if he's on all of them, but certainly like a lot of the early ones, he did his own camera work, and I haven't checked on Boss of It All or Antichrist, but like so what you have is you have certain shots that are framed, and then you have certain shots that are literally random. And like they showed in this behind the scenes shot, they showed one where the guy talking was cut off at his chin. But um, what it does, I think, in a weird way, he's kind of this like mad genius type, right? Because what it does is it creates a sense of like maybe this is a little bit more real because it doesn't feel quite so staged and perfect, right?
Yeah, which I mean, he's kind of rejected that beyond like Europa, right? Like to have this very overly thought out cinematography. Like it's a lot
Until
of motion.
until Melancholia, I think. But yeah, um, I think that's back in Melancholia. But you're saying you're saying after Europa, he was not quite so like staged and kind of framed and well and thought out, right? You're saying there was a gap where
Yeah,
it was
I would
more
say between
organic.
up to this point.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and I would say that maybe the exception is Dancer in the Dark, just because of the few musical sequences I think are a little bit more. Which even that, I mean, you said it was like a bunch of cameras running at once, so from there you're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what's great at that point. So even
Yeah,
then, it's still like random. It's still
yeah.
not necessarily blocked. I don't want to sit there and say Von Trier has no concept of blocking, but I don't think he finds it very important.
Yeah, no, I
Where
don't think
like
so.
something like Kubrick, who would find it the most important thing on the planet.
I I do think again, it's always weird to like run to the defense of Von Trier because he's such a controversial guy. However, I do think he's this kind of interesting genius or interesting type of genius, where film to him, I think, is like this big experiment. That's what I'm starting to see him as. He never does the same thing twice. Even though he has a certain way of writing, the movies never look the same. They never feel the same, right? Um, I think the themes might be similar, but that's kind of where they end, right? Um, and
Yeah,
and
I
he
think
just
he
seems
sees himself as more like an artist more than a filmmaker, if that makes sense. Like I feel
I
like as an
totally agree.
yeah, like when you're an artist, you're just doing things that interest you. Whereas a filmmaker, you look more towards the technicals, which isn't a bad thing. That's not the wrong way to do it. To be interested in how cinematography works and how blocking works and how lights work. But
Yeah.
Von Trier just doesn't care about any of that, like more than he has to.
Yeah. In fact, I was writing a review of Dogville earlier in the day when I had some time, and I didn't get to finish, but I put a sentence in that I thought you would like. So I called him. I don't. I'm sitting on this. I don't know if I'm getting included in the final review, but I'm sitting on this idea. I said he loves to tinker. He's always creative. He's always pushing technology. I said he's the James Cameron of independent, emotionally challenging, well-written art house cinema.
Yeah, just put that. I mean, he is James Cameron. Just leave it there. Won't be
James
confusing at
Cameron
all.
and Lars von Trier. They maybe, yeah, who knows? But anyways, I have literally nothing else to say on the boss of it all. I mean, it's a cute sort of quaint comedy compared to literally everything else he's ever done, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to talk about this. It'd be hard to even talk about something like, just as an example, since I used it earlier, Airplane. Besides, what'd you think about this joke? What did you think about this joke? This joke was
No,
pretty
totally.
funny. This one didn't land. But I will say, I wanted to bring up one thing just because I thought it was interesting. What did you think about him basically name dropping dogma style filmmaking? A thing he created. Like I was like,
Wait,
wait, that's weird.
wait, where in the movie?
Yeah, like the blonde-headed
Oh, in
HR
the beginning. In
chick.
the beginning.
Yeah, she mentions dogma style filmmaking, and I'm like,
That's
that feels
right.
so
That's right.
odd.
Uh, he was the sole writer on this, I believe. So
Yeah.
just he just got it in.
It'd be, I mean, it's just like, look, I can get sometimes where people give him the pretentious accusations or the egotistical accusations. It's like when you
What?
do things like that, man.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can't get away from it. Yeah, I think I think we covered it. I mean, who would like this movie? This is not a Von Trier movie. This is a if you just like comedy, I think this is one worth giving a shot, right?
Yeah, I like a few years from now, I can see myself like thinking about it and throwing it in because I do think it's funny. Like it's not gonna like bust a gut. It's not gonna be like the funniest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's a good time. Like I don't remember particularly getting bored during any of it. I will say, going back to my American remake request, Zach Galifianakis would have to play the owner. There is no other choice. He is the owner.
That would be yeah, that would be great. That would be a different kind of movie. His brand of comedy would play very well in this though,
Yeah, I
because
just
he
like
would.
think of his character from like Between Two Ferns, like being the owner.
Yeah,
I think it'd be
exactly. Yeah,
hysterical.
yeah. No, that's good. I like it. Uh, when you first said Zach, I was thinking of that dude who was like an indie star in the early 2000s. That was in
It's a random place to go.
Scrubs.
Yeah, Zach Brannigan. No, it's not Zach Brannigan. I was just about to do a Futurama reference. Zach Braff. Zach Braff.
Brath. Yeah, at first I thought Zach Brath. I was like, what? But no, Galifianakis is much better. Yeah.
So if we have no more last ones, I feel like if we just keep putting off getting depressed, it'll just never happen. So do you have any final thoughts on Boss of It All?
No, let's do it. Let's get into it.
All right. So next on our list is while Letterbox disagrees with me. I feel like Antichrist is one of those movies where a lot of people who aren't fans of his work haven't seen anything else, but they've seen Antichrist because of its notoriety for being disturbing. I've told this story before, so I'm not going to like bore anyone. But this was one of the movies on the list when me and my friend, who I saw in Philadelphia, where we took a whole weekend during exams in college and sat down and watched a list of the most disturbing films ever made. So this was my introduction to
Mhm.
Lars here, and I think it was quite a lot of people. But to not go too far into it, this movie is a grieving couple retreats to their cabin, Eden, in the woods, hoping to repair their broken heart and troubled marriage. But nature takes its course, and things go from bad to worse. I'll accept that description. I'm not sure it really is accurate, but yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So, all right, let's get the let's see where I'm actually curious because I feel like a lot of people have seen this, so I feel like it's a little bit more of where divisive Von Trier is. So, where does it end up on these lists?
So, first of all, I mean, I think this is a dumb one for this one, but do you think it's on They Shoot Zombies?
Yeah, I could see that just because it gets the moniker like disturbing. I feel like
Mhm.
it does show up on there.
So, not only is it on the list, it's the 205th best horror film of all time, according to critics.
I like this movie. I really do. And I mean, I'm not against calling it a horror movie. I don't think we'll get to a quote later that I did see about Melancholia where he talks about he went out to make a horror film and he wasn't successful. And
Oh,
but I disagree with it. I do think he has like some sense of horror, but I think drama is just very high on like what he likes. So things become very drama heavy with
yeah.
sudden burst of horror.
Yeah. Um, he, he- I mean, it's a horror movie. Like, I think I'm fine with that. I will call out Celeste from an earlier podcast we did because she called it right. I mean, sometimes melodrama doesn't have to be Douglas Sirk, right? I
Right.
think Von Trier is a really interesting example of melodrama as something that's truly like melodramatic. Like this is more of that like possession style melodrama.
I am so glad you said Possession. I was going to compare this movie to Possession. So I'm glad we got that out of the way because that was going to be one of my comparisons.
Oh, damn, sorry to take it away.
No, no, I'm glad. Like I'm glad we're on the same page and I wasn't going to be say something and be like, no, not even close. Not at all. I'll be like, oh, okay.
It certainly is like a horror of the mind, I guess, right? Um, it's interesting where, it's hard to say with lists, but, Hostel from Eli Roth is higher than this, which I think is interesting.
I wonder, this is one of the issues you'll have with something like this, to where there is like this debate if it's a horror movie or not, to where maybe
Mhm.
it loses some spots because some critics wouldn't be like, nah, that's not a horror movie. I'm not going to add it to my list.
Yeah, right, right.
And Hostel is pretty aggressively in the horror, um,
No, for sure.
in the horror genre. So it's I think that horror lists are hard just because of that, of like, because I'm sure Possession is in a similar boat where a lot of that movie isn't a horror movie until it becomes one, like halfway through.
Yeah,
and
right.
I feel like this is similar in a lot of ways. I would love to know, is this the one he dedicated to Travasky, or was that
Oh,
Melancholia?
no, it's Melancholia. You're talking about, sorry, I don't mean to correct you. You're talking about Tarkovsky, right?
Tarkovsky,
The,
yes, thank you.
no, no,
Yes.
sorry, I don't mean to.
No, no,
Okay, yeah,
correct me, please. I'm doing it by memory, so
yeah.
please correct me.
I think I'm pretty sure that's Melancholia,
Okay.
um, which I think maybe fits as well. But yeah, if we're talking about a horror list, I think Mario Bava is going to be in what 40 of the top 200 spots, anyways.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then from there, it's just whoever else can fit in. But um, where are we? What did you think?
Well, I like this movie, and I will say, I probably had more. I haven't seen this movie since I saw it in college, so that was probably 2013, 2014 when I saw it, and I probably had better memories of the movie from then. And I think the only reason I'm harder on it now is because I have found similar things, like we brought up Possession. I think Possession does a lot of these things better,
Mm,
which isn't
mm,
necessarily a bad thing. It's not a hit against it. It's just I've been a lot more exposed to a lot of different films, and a lot of things that I thought were really unique or special just
mm.
they get a little dulled. I'm not going to sit here and rag on the movie. I gave it a very high score. I still think it's really good, but it's probably not like as great as I thought it was 10 years ago, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I forgot to mention They Shoot Pictures has it at 2,224. So top 2,500, I guess.
So Boss
Uh,
of It All was higher, or am I
no,
wrong?
no, no.
No, okay.
It all was 18,000 or something.
18,000. Okay. For some reason, I thought 1,800 for some reason. I was like, oh, that's
Oh,
weird.
yeah, no, that would be wild. Um, hmm. So I've thought a lot about this movie. It's this is the first time I'd seen it, right?
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
I thought a lot about this movie because uh, like it's a masterpiece. Like this is a phenomenal movie. Like
Yeah. And it
it,
looks great. Like, I was like, since we've been going this in order, I'm like, this movie looks great. Like, I'm so not used to this.
it looks great. The subject, if you can get past some of the shocking stuff, like some of the visuals in this are shocking.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I still like, I should cringe at one because of what happens to him. For anyone who hasn't seen it, they're just called he and she. They do not have names in this film.
that's
So
right.
you do the best you can. There's a part that should make me cringe, and it does, but what she does to herself makes me cringe. I don't even think I watched it this time. I knew it was coming, and I was just like, nope. I actually couldn't do it. I was like, I can't
I,
do it. So credit to him. I still can't watch it.
I mean, is it a spoiler to discuss the the brutal parts? It
We'll
is. No, it
go a
is.
little bit before, and then we'll open it
Yeah.
up. I think is the
You
best way
know,
to do
I agree because there are honestly like I didn't know it was coming and it was more powerful. So I think in that way it is a spoiler. But let me go back to the main point. So even with the shocking visuals, which are actually shocking, which is kind of hard to do, um, this is a movie about like somebody who's having deep, intense emotional and mental breakdown, right? Who has who has been able to capture those moments. There is and put them on screen. You know, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about the main actor, the main female actor, not Charlotte Rampling, that's the older woman.
it. Starts with a
What's the
G. She's gonna be. We're gonna be have to learn her name because she's gonna show up a lot. Charlotte Gainsbourg.
Yeah, Charlotte Gainsbourg. Charlotte, thank you, because her dad is Serge Gainsbourg. Like she's a
Mhm.
famous like. Anyways, yes, Charlotte Gainsbourg. Thank you. She said this was an extremely autobiographical film for Lars, to the point where he wrote the character of her, and it's his character, like it's him.
Yeah, which is so interesting because of his accusations for this movie of being misogynistic,
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
when really it's this. We talk about art being a very personal thing and trying to express something, and it's even back then, I never, even before I've learned a lot about him more doing this and things like that, I never really got into the misogynistic thing because, like I said, we're going to talk about possession a lot, but I wouldn't call that misogynistic. And it does a lot of the same thing with the female character. It's,
The only difference I think Possession is a better movie, by the way. So
I do
I'm
too.
with
Yeah,
you.
Possession's a top five movie of all time for me. So
That wasn't.
definitely is for me.
The only difference I'll say, I don't know if I have the ability to say misogynistic or not. Like I don't know if I want to go down that path. But the only thing I'll say about Possession is that I think there is an anger towards women in the movie that can be read into it,
Mhm.
right? Where I mean, he was writing it coming out of a breakup, right? And coming out of being feeling betrayed, and like you kind of learn about his personal life, and you're like, oh yeah, the dude, like he has some anger to work out.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think Von Trier's coming from a place of anger. I think he's or a place of saying that one of the characters is like better than the other. Like I don't think Willem Dafoe's character is superior here or
No, he
inferior.
and he makes some like really obvious mistakes. Probably the biggest one, and this is me going into my background, and they even admitted in the film, him being her therapist is the worst absolute idea. It is a
Right, right, right.
terrible idea, but it's understandable why he chooses to do it. I mean,
Hmm.
who better to talk to than your husband? Who
Well,
better to
he's
talk to than someone who's suffering from the same thing you are? But it's
exactly,
that exact reason he shouldn't be doing it.
exactly, and yeah, and so he's not a perfect character by any means. And she's certainly not a perfect character, but that doesn't make him angry at her or like writing her from a place of, mm,
Depressed people aren't rational. Like that's just the
yeah,
reality of it. They're not meant to be rational people. They're people who just lost their child, and
right.
they're trying. I think you look at Willem Dafoe's character. He's looking at it as a place of control. He wants things to move on. He wants them to get better, and they're at different points in the grieving process, and he can't really deal with that.
Yes, right.
And
Eh,
she can't deal that he's okay. Like he's able to show more emotion. He's able to kind of compartmentalize this grief into being something, I don't want to say normal. There's no such thing as normal grief, but more socially acceptable grief, I guess would be the better word.
yeah. Right. And there's, two representations of kind of grieving, I guess, right? If, I haven't thought of it that way, but that's a good point. Like there is a type of grief where you kind of maybe compartmentalize is the best word, but you're able to just kind of like get on with your life and you deal with it as it comes up. Probably has waves or, whatever, and you deal with it. And then there's the kind of grief where you're just done, like you're just broken, right? And that's where she's at.
And of course, as we'll talk about it when we get to the spoiler portion, but her grief is also has probably many factors that he isn't aware of. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
because they
Right.
kind of saw their son as very differently. And it's and just for anyone who hasn't seen it, the kid is like 3 years old. What would you say? He's about 2 or 3.
Yeah, ish, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason he dies, in a weirdly beautifully shot segment of actual penetration in the film.
Hmm.
Um, the husband and wife are having sex, and the kid
Hmm.
gets out of the crib and he walks out of a window during the snow, and all this is in slow motion. It's
Hmm.
very beautifully and dreamy shot. This is probably the closest to the Europa stuff
Yeah,
I've seen since he's done it. Like
for sure, for sure.
specifically that stuff. It's very beautifully shot, no matter how horrifying it is. So this is probably there is no time where it's going to be okay for a parent to deal with the death of their child, but this is particularly probably some of the hardest at that age.
They were in an intensely beautiful moment as a couple and ended it to find that their son had fallen out of a window and had done it because they weren't watching him because they were having sex, right? Like that is that is the kind of thing that ruins people, right? And I think it's one of the ways that sex is used to be so poetic in this movie, although it's darkly poetic. Sex is used very poetically in this movie because it's one of the ways that she grieves, right? And I think for her, the orgasm is always going to be attached to pain. And I think that's why the movie kind of ends the way it does. Like, I think it's a very visually poetic through line in the film. And it makes sense for him to do the things that he does from the story perspective. It just is so incredibly hard to watch, right?
Yeah, because I think when you look at Willem Dafoe's character, he sees this as a fixable situation. Like it's it's really you just watching, knowing the further it goes along, you're like, this is hopeless in the situation they're currently in.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's getting to the point where she doesn't want to deal with it, so she tries to have sex with him and then asks him to hit her. And
Yeah,
it's like that's tough. Like that's and it's like this is a lot of this movie is you're watching people deal with things. And I did find this fascinating because I think he does this. I want to say he does it in this and he does it in Melancholia, where I kind of get, there is very much a sense that Von Trier believes at facing things head on, in the sense that they talk about exposure therapy in both of
yeah,
them. And
right,
I feel
right.
like he does that because he has a belief in that. And there is a lot of study behind exposure therapy. I'm not going to bore anybody with my education and doing all that because no one wants to hear it. But the point really is that it seems more of a belief that of not believing in medications. The Willem Dafoe's character talks about that she's over medicated and that she just needs to face these things.
Yeah.
And the reality is her facing them is making them worse.
Right. Because in her mind, she's convinced, and she even says it, right? Like, it's not a shared responsibility because I knew he's been getting out of bed. I wasn't watching him. This is on me. And of course, that's not fair for her, right? But she's internalized that. And so because she's internalized that, there's nothing you can do from her being her husband, or I don't know if they specifically say husband, but being the father here, like there's nothing you can do to convince her of that simply by telling her it's not the case, right?
Yeah, because that's his job. He'd be a shitty husband if he said, "Yeah, it's your fault." Like, and it's not her fault.
Right.
I don't want to make it seem like it is, but she also knows that too. Like, of course you're going to tell me it's not my fault.
Therefore, it's like this kind of weird conundrum of spiraling into it's not even depression. It's like this kind of manic state, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's almost you hate to use the word hysteria because it has negative connotations, but to a sense, yeah, there's like hysterics to it.
Yeah. Well,
Justifiably so. I mean, this is this for until we get to later on, a lot of this does seem very justified.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. It's, he wrote a woman character, but this is what he's got. So like, so the interesting thing, I would recommend anybody that has seen this or shortly after watching this, go watch the interview that Charlotte Gainsbourg does around the time she was in Cannes, because what she says is she's never had an episode like this. She's never had a manic episode in her life. So he actually like coached her because it's something that he experiences regularly. So you learn some of these behind the scenes interviews. He's such a, he's kind of a troll in interviews, right? And I think part of it is he feels misunderstood, and we'll probably get into the
Oh
con
yeah,
interviews in a
we'll
minute.
get into some questions he's received about this film. So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely get there.
So he might not feel safe in a sense to like go open up himself the way that people can talk about him more like the way that Charlotte talks about him. But that's kind of interesting nuance here, right? Like she's actually just acting based on the way he's describing this manic episode. So to say it's hysteria or whatever, I understand there's like a gender stereotype with that word, so that's why you're like sensitive to it. But whatever word you want to use, like this is what he experienced. And so like he found somebody who could go big when she was acting and coached her and how to do it because she didn't know. So this is, I don't know, like I think I thought the movie was good, and then watching some of these behind the scenes features, I was convinced that it's something that's really kind of a masterpiece because what he's doing is like he's putting himself on display and saying like this is what is going on in his mind when he's spiraling down, and like he's just exposing like he's naked to the world, right? Like he's completely exposing himself. And it must have been very confusing to get the feedback he got from the movie because he's like, well, what are you talking about? Like, it's not about her. Like, this is about me.
And I will go ahead and I'll kind of bring up one that I thought because his response gets taken out of context a lot. I've heard this one for years where people bring up that in an interview he said he was the greatest director in the world, but they
Mhm,
completely take out the context of why he said that. He had an
mhm.
interviewer demand that he justify the existence of this film, and
It's
he
an
did not
interesting
think that was
exchange.
fair. And
Yes.
he just said it's because I'm the greatest director in the world. It's a very snarky comment because he's being put on the defensive for making a like. And this is wild about Antichrist to me. I don't know if it's because he's a former Cannes nominee. He's been there a lot. He's had opportunities to win a lot. A lot of the actors and actresses who have played in his movies have won. That people feel like he has a certain duty not to make films like this. But it's like, look, there's a lot of rough in this film. I'm not going to downplay that, but it's not like it's unique to what he's done. Like, I mean, people have made disturbing films as long as the code has allowed them to make disturbing films.
And these films have played at Cannes, right? Like, it's not, I mean, it's not like it's the first time these critics have seen something shocking, right?
Yeah, it's just because he did it almost feels so personal, like in a weird way, that he's got to justify this
Mhm.
to a certain
Yeah.
degree. And it's like, what is the justification beyond I made it because I felt like I needed to? Like that's why every director makes something like that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And
Do you,
even Khan gave him a special nomination, an anti-humanitarian award, basically for this film.
interesting.
And it's like, it's so wild to me because, like I said, Antichrist is disturbing, but it's not, disturbing for the sake of being disturbing. There's a reason, and it's not even a hard to decipher reason. Like we're sitting here talking about it, like what this is saying and what it means, and I think we could derive a lot of this without even seeing those interviews. That but they're just acting like he made it for the sake of, like the sake of being provocative or disturbing. And I feel like this is one of the few times where I don't necessarily think he made this film to be provocative. It is naturally because of the subject matter, but I don't think that was necessarily intention like some of his films.
Just curious, what's a film that you think, oh, are you saying Nymphomaniac?
Yeah, I mean that I think has a sense of being provocative. I think the idiots is, it's there to be
Ooh,
provocative.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
it has
yeah,
something to say. It doesn't
yeah.
take that away, but it does take away like I'm going to do something disturbing, because I want to make a point. Where
No, no,
this
no.
is, I think it becomes disturbing because you're making a point and it just that's where it leads. Like I
No,
feel
no,
like
it's a
it's not the horse before the carriage sort of thing.
no, no, it's a great point. Idiots is a good example, but yeah, but again, you kind of talked about this, and I think you're right, spot on. Like, he has a reputation, and the questions that came to him from that one particular interviewer were just simply not fair. Like, how dare, like, can you imagine if Spielberg, like, how dare you talk to a director and say you have an obligation to justify this film? And he's like, "Well, what? I don't think I do." And he goes, "Yeah, no, you do, right?" Like he was very aggressive. And so what kind of answer do you think you're gonna get there?
And he gives you a snarky one because why wouldn't he? Like, there's no answer he's going to give is going to be good enough. Because unless it's I did it because I'm a depraved asshole. Like, or that's what they want something to justify it. So he might as well just give them a soundbite that they'll use, which is I'm the greatest director in the world.
Exactly,
Because fuck
exactly.
it, who cares? Like, you're gonna put whatever you're gonna put,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this, and I think I remember reading, because it's been a while since I've read like more context about that quote, but one of the things that bothered him the most is these people are guests allowed to see the film, like, and he feels like the act of justification is essentially saying they're not guests, that he is the guest, and it's like, no, I'm choosing to show my movie here, and
Oh,
you got invited here. Like, I don't have to justify anything
yeah.
because
Yeah.
this isn't your show. And people can say
But
that's
even
egotistical, but the reason you're at con is for the directors.
yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Even take something like a Serbian film, right? It, that I'm sure that guy's been asked to justify that movie before, right?
Yeah.
uh, and Cannibal Holocaust, they got called in front of Congress, right? Or
Yeah.
some court
Or we'll
to
give
make
one
sure
that's
that
in the Criterion Collection, Salo. I mean, a guy who has made art house films his whole
yeah,
career.
yeah,
You
great,
know,
great example. I'm
yeah,
sure
it's just
Pasolini did that. But in the movies that have like a legacy, I guess, that kind of last beyond that initial controversy, I think are ones that have something to say. And for me, Antichrist definitely has something to say.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think it's I think a lot of people who've had any form of depression can, even if you don't identify with everything, even if you haven't went through a lot of that, I think there's like something visceral and raw you can pull from it, and
that's
just
kind of how I feel. It's similar to the alien in possession. It's like this, you just get this moment. I mean, can we do spoilers for a second?
you know we've talked a lot about the setup, so just skip ahead if you are interested in this film. We both recommend it. It's very good. I think a lot of the disturbing stuff will hit harder if you don't know, and I will say that even if I did know, it still was hard to watch, but I think if you don't know it, this is a good time to just start skipping ahead until we're talking about Melancholia. So I think we're good.
I agree, and I didn't know, and it hit hard. So I think it's there. So there's two moments that stand out to me. You might tell me I'm missing an obvious one, but one where they're having sex and she essentially starts jacking off Willem Dafoe and it spits blood.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, that's a tough one.
And then the second one where she takes scissors and snips off her clitoris, right?
That's the one I couldn't even watch this time.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't, I can't do it.
No, no, no. It's insane. Like uh it's effective and being shocking, right? But as I was like sitting here thinking about what the fuck, one of the things I realized is that it's impossible for Gainsbourg to separate pleasure and pain, right? She can't, I mean, sexual pleasure and pain.
Mhm.
So I just think it's like this, well, Von Trier, his whole career, he's always carried out an idea to the logical conclusion. That's like a thing he does, right?
Mhm.
So if he's gonna make a movie about, again, I don't know where this came from. He didn't have a child that died, so I don't know where this story came from. But if he's gonna make a movie about parents that are having amazing sex to wake up and find their son has died, it's logical to follow through that one of them would sink into a deep, I don't know, like internal struggle and conflict around any time that there's pain, the need to bring pleasure into it, right? And that like those things become kind of connected.
It's a taught behavior essentially. It's the old dog hears the bell, they know it means food. It's sadly a thing everyone goes through. When you
Yes.
associate something with something else, whether logical or purely connected, it's there, it's ingrained, and it's hard to break it. And she is at the point where it's just PT. I mean, it's hard to give diagnosis here, but it seems like a form of PTSD anytime there's anything sexual going on. But I almost feel like that's her, like what he doesn't understand, in my opinion, is like, there's a scene early on where she wants to have sex with him, and he's very uncomfortable because he doesn't really. It's hard to say why he doesn't, but he makes the joke like you shouldn't sleep with your therapist, things like that. But I think it's because he doesn't feel like she's in the right state of mind to do it. But he
I think
does
so.
want to expose her. But I think what he's missing is that is her exposure therapy.
Right.
Like that is her, like, because for her, I feel like every time anything sexual happens, that memory is just there, and that pain is there, and that is her way to try to fight it head on. You can do breathing exercises, you can talk about it, but to her, that's not the exposure therapy. This is.
Right. Yeah. It's true. Um, so yeah, I mean that's one thing in the movie. I think that the more I sort of reflect on it, it's effective, and I think it's quite. God, I don't know what's the right word to use. I almost said quite beautiful. It's absolutely not that, but it's masterful maybe. Like it's a very intelligent and uh powerful way of conveying the point of this woman who's spiraling.
Yeah,
The
and I
thing
and
that
I,
I
and I think about it too. Like if we use like his typical filming techniques, I feel
Mhm.
like this is an ugly movie. Like this is at least like I think the beauty of, like, as hard as it is to say, the beauty of like the cinematography and the look and everything else makes it almost manageable. Like I think about this shot like half of his other films, I'd be like, I wouldn't even watch it. Like this
Yeah,
sounds excruciating.
like Dancer in the Dark or something, you couldn't do it, right?
Yeah, it's tough. I think I think he knew he needed that, and I think he does a good decision into saying, okay, we're going to shoot this like an actual movie,
Yeah.
like a more traditional movie, I should say.
It's interesting. He does have chapters in this too, so he seems to be very interested in this kind of chapter thing. Maybe it's I don't know why. But the other thing though that I didn't quite understand, I didn't know if you had any thoughts on it, is the role. So she, as she's processing grief, she has this very painful relationship to nature. She calls it, nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for her, nature is it called Satan's garden?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many biblical, some really obvious. I think some are a little bit more subtle within the movie. I mean, they go to a place called Eden, like you know.
Right,
I say that as someone who lives near a town that is called Eden, but still, it's definitely an on the nose decision.
right.
Um, yeah, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, but there's also this idea that she's almost like has this demonic element to her, or like these illusions to it, because like
Yes,
when she walks outside, her feet burn,
that's right.
and it's interesting of what they're really trying to say with this. Of course, the film is called Antichrist, and it's not really brought up what that means, and I'm not in a good position to talk about biblical allegory because that's tough. Like I feel like it was a little bit easier breaking the waves, where this one is a little bit more abstract, I guess would be the word.
Well, there's two things. There's one where they go to a place called Eden, but the I think the cabin is Eden, right?
Is
Not
that
the
what it is?
not
Okay.
No, no, I don't actually remember, but maybe the whole area is. But the only reason I said it like that is because when she leaves the cab or when they leave the cabin, and sink into the grass, there's bodies there, which I'm assuming is meant to be like bodies like burning in hell or like in hell,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So I don't know, like, because the worst stuff in the movie happens when she's in the cabin, which is supposed to be like the safe place. But it's like as she's breaking down, maybe this is just kind of like a visual of like her slipping away from any sense of heaven into like a hell, if you want to stay with the poetry of it.
Ye-
Maybe it's something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like a self-punishment thing. I guess since we're in spoilers, we could talk about, one of the things they found during the autopsy report was that his feet were a little deformed. And from there, Defoe starts noticing in pictures that his shoes are always on backwards.
Hmm.
And so, we can call this some type of, I don't know, Munchausen by proxy. Like, I don't know what she's exactly doing, but I don't know if this is like, this is definitely part of the guilt. Like, and, that's when you're like, okay, you should probably feel a little bit guilty since you're putting the poor kid through pain on purpose for some reason. And I think that's where I think that's why it's really hard at this point, once that reveal happens, to really find any solid evidence of what exactly is the emotional state. Because it's like, we don't really know why she did this. We don't really understand like how this ties in. And I think that's on purpose. I'm not doing it to criticize the movie. I think it's very much an abstract piece, pretty much
Yeah,
from that reveal to the end.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. It's despite the fact I think we've both been positive on it. I mean, it's a hard watch.
Yeah, like I told somebody, I probably won't watch it for another 10 years. And I'm somebody, I watch Cannibal Holocaust like every year or two. I have no issue watching that movie. I think, killing animals for film is a shitty thing to do, but I like the movie. I accept it for what it is. Or
Mhm.
just like anything else. I've seen Human Centipede a few times. I've seen different movies that are considered very disturbing. I've seen them on multiple watches, but this one, I think it's because it's well made. It make like a lot of schlocky movies. You're like, it's not that well made, or it's
Right,
very
right,
amateur
right.
filmmaking. You have somebody who is at this point, as far as making feature films, 30 some years into his career, and so he knows what he's doing. He's very competent, and he's deciding to do these things that would a lot of times be found in cheap horror films and make them a legitimate part of the film. And I think that makes it a lot harder, because
Yeah.
there is. I think that's what a lot. Some critics. I can't stake for their speed of mind, but when you read about what they say, I feel like they had a harder time accepting it because it had a meaning to it, and I think that was the
Mm,
point. Like when all this ultra violence is meaningful, it's harder.
yeah. Right, right. You can't dismiss it as being like a provocateur just trying to be, whatever. Like there's it hits you after the movie's over, you're still thinking about it and you don't want to think about it because it's so heavy, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
it's like, you can sit there and be like, oh, they did that for, a cheap gag, or they did that to do it for shock value. And it's like, no, this isn't shock value. It's shocking, but it's not shock value.
the human mind is capable of going down to some very dark places,
Yeah.
right? And it's uncomfortable to watch, like if you want to think of it from like an unfiltered mind. That's one read on this movie, right? Is that she's just kind of slipping and she's losing control, and like this is just an unfiltered breakdown, psychotic break, and it's hard to watch. Like much smaller scale, much less extreme, but watching my 99-year-old grandma go through dementia is just hard to watch, right?
Yeah.
And that's why when Noé made Vortex, it's such a powerful film because it's a very accurate representation of dementia. Is it no, not Vortex? What's the one you made with Dario Argento as an actor?
That wasn't Adara, or what do you say that? Well, wasn't that one, was it? The 50-minute
Hold
one?
on. No, 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 no.
Yeah, you might know it. I don't know if I haven't seen it yet, so you'll have to tell me.
It has a beautiful release from one of the partner labels. Um, it's I'll find it here in just about 10
It's
seconds.
like LXV Aterna. maybe.
No, no, no. No, it is Vortex. I'm sorry. It is Vortex.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the
From
one with the
2020.
split cover. Like you open it almost like the elevator cover of
Yeah, yeah.
Old Boy and stuff. Yeah.
Lux Eterna is the one you were thinking of. But no,
Yeah.
it's Vortex is the right one. And it's tough to watch. It's a, like, especially if you've had someone in your life who's gone through Alzheimer's or dementia or something, because you see this couple that's very sweet with each other and they're just kind of slipping. So, anyways, there are certain directors that can do this. I think Noe is another one that gets probably unfairly criticized because people just don't want to watch what he makes, which is totally fair. You don't have to,
It's
but
what's
it
that
doesn't.
guy's name who made Spring Breakers? He gets thrown in that too.
How Harmony Korine?
Yeah, like where he makes. In fairness, I don't like his movies either, but like it's kind of the same thing. Like I'm here to make your life miserable. Here you
Yes.
go.
Right, 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 right. Um, of this lot, I think Von Trier's movies tend to be ones that I think about for longer, and like, um, I don't know. He just I don't know. His mind just is like it feels like a very deep thinker, and so his mind feels like a deep place, and he's able to somehow capture it. And this is a deep, deep, kind of psychotic break, and it's just tough.
I think too, like when you talk about Noe, Noe is good. I like a lot of his films. I'm a huge fan of Irreversible. I'm a huge fan of Climax and things like that. But I also
Yep.
don't think he is a particularly great at plotting, and he doesn't need to be. It's not the point of his films. Where I think Von Trier, with his television background, with his filmmaking background, he spends a lot of time writing, like in the writing process itself, and I think that makes it more meaningful. Like, yeah, you can sit there and talk about the shocking things, which is what you do in Irreversible. It's what you do there, and they have meaning, they have a purpose, but these have like a context. Like when you watch Antichrist, there's a context here that you can ignore all that shocking stuff for the most part and still have something there where we talk about like the melodrama and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm emotionally spent on this one. Are you ready to go talk about depression?
Yeah, yeah. Let's get to the last one for tonight. So if everyone thought that was depressing, I will say this is more depressing than Melancholia, but Melancholia is still quite a bit depressing. His 2011
Yeah.
film about two sisters find their already strained relationship challenge as a mysterious new planet threatens to collide with Earth. So, Chris, the reason I am very, you told me when we first started this, your memory was you hated this
Yeah.
movie.
I was
Is
wrong.
that still the case?
No, I was wrong. This movie's amazing.
Okay. I was sitting there watching it and I was like, this is so much like half the other stuff we've talked about that you've liked. So I was like, why did he hate this? I really want to know.
No, no, no. I have no idea exactly what I didn't like about it because it was about 10 years ago, right? Wasn't it like a 2011 or
Yeah.
2013 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. I must have just been half paying attention or something. No, this is a beautiful movie. I also don't like Kirsten Dunst at all as an actor. I think I get annoyed at movies like The Virgin Suicides because I don't want to like it. I love that movie, but I don't want to because I don't like her as an actor. Um,
What a
she just
hater.
has this, you what?
What a hater.
I know. She just has this perennially like dumb face. She just like doesn't have any emotion. Like I don't get it. I don't get her as an actor. But damn it, like she's awesome in this. She's amazing in this, and she's very good in The Virgin Suicide. So she's a good actor, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a bias against her.
But we're
Um,
all allowed to have one. We're allowed to have that random act where we can't really explain why we dislike them, but it's passionate and we do.
yeah, exactly. This is almost exactly inverse from the other list. So it's the 4,859th best horror film.
Okay.
Oddly enough, you know what's up here by Melancholia is The Devil from Zulaski, which is interesting. I would have thought that that would be much higher.
I think it's just an underseen one, which hopefully changes now that there's fucking Blu-ray release
Yeah,
of that.
that's a
So
good point. Yeah, that's a good point because that Diabell is awesome. Um, anyways, so it's 4,000, but on They Shoot Pictures, it's rated one of his highest films. It's rated at 306.
okay, so yeah, it really did take a it kind of makes sense that I feel like horror fans would latch on to Antichrist more than they would Melancholia.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I feel like that makes a whole lot of sense. There's a lot more for horror fans, I think, to latch on to. Where Melancholia does have some horror stuff to it. I think it's, especially if you want to count disaster pieces and stuff like that. Though this is a weird one to call a disaster movie, in all honesty, but it kind of is. This whole movie is kind of strange. This is going to be me rambling about this film because I was sitting there watching it. I'm like, yeah, it's definitely a Von Trier movie, but it still feels like it's like weird, and I can't. Maybe we can talk about like the feelings here because I'm just like I can see the breaking the wave stuff. Like
Yeah,
it's hard not to compare this to breaking the waves,
I agree.
but at the same time it's like there's something here, and I feel like it's because I watched it directly after Antichrist. There's a weird way he's kind of talking about depression where this one, I don't know. I we'll get into it. It's an interesting movie. I really enjoyed rewatching it because I feel like I got more out of it this time, even though I liked it the first time. I think I got more out of it this time.
Yeah. I don't mean to get too personal. Have you had much experience with depression ever?
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot more
Do
when I
you
was when I was a young adult, more than now. But yeah, I would say I've had a fair share of them. It's a genetic, arguably genetic. My mom has been clinically depressed since she was 15. She is 62 now, so that's been around it, had it, so a little bit here and there.
just at a high level, without getting into too much detail, but like, do you feel like it's a fair representation of, because for my whole family has mental health stuff just like littered. It's just everybody on my mom's side is um, all sorts of extreme stuff. But I felt like Kristen Dunst did a good job and was written well from the perspective of kind of going in and out of enjoyment of life and kind of going through this like, there's times in the movie where she had to be strong, and it's hard in those moments, but like there's a lot of the movie she just couldn't be, and she made a lot of rash decisions, and she just kind of she was just in her head, and like I don't know, I thought that was done well, but I'm curious, your from your perspective, from your experience with it.
Probably, I think the most identifiable part of the film, like from a personal level, was a part where her and her sister are talking at the wedding, and
Uh-huh.
her sister is upset because she's not happy, even though they've done all this stuff to try to make this wedding perfect. And she's like, I'm out there smiling. And it's like, but you don't mean it. And that really, it's one of those things where you can understand the frustration from the sister, but at the same time, you're basically asking someone to feel something they can't feel.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like she
right.
can't win. If she fakes smiling to make people happy, they get upset with her. But if she were to be honest about how she's feeling, they would be upset with her. It's a no-win situation to where it's hard to, it's hard to blame somebody for feeling that way because, if you don't have depression, it's like, okay, well, what else could you want? And obviously she comes from it seems like a pretty wealthy family, right? Like it's fair to say that. It's
Oh
easy to
yeah,
sit there and say, okay, well, why are you depressed? You have access to all these things. And it's like
right.
depression doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
And I think, the rogue planet, going to destroy the world is like this beautiful representation of what depression feels like. Just like this incoming doom that you can do nothing about. Like
yeah,
this, it's like an external showing of what depression's like. Like, yeah, sure, her problems may not seem that bad, but the world is ending. And like to her, that's how it feels too. Like, she ruined her chance at a marriage. She can't seem to feel like she does anything right. She can't seem to find many connections. And yeah, sure, a lot of it's her own doing, but some of it is just because she doesn't know what to do at this point. She feels hopeless, just like a planet about to hit our planet. What can you do about that? Nothing. That's like the whole
yeah.
point of the last 20 minutes is there's nothing you can do. This is it.
That's what I think is I didn't get the first time, and that just I just missed it. Um, That's why I think this movie probably hits so many people, right? Because, you know, depression is one of these weird things. I mean, it's fairly talked about now, probably borderline cliche at this point. But like depression is one of those things. It's like kind of a silent killer, right? Because a lot of people function with it. But there are days where you just like can't, right? You just like it feels like the world's ending, and and you almost want it to. Like that's as as Doom gets closer. Well, I guess we're kind of getting into the, but like as Doom gets closer, she gets happier or more content, right?
And there's a realism part of that. Like one of the biggest things, this is another thing that's more known now, but it was a big part. Like when we were learning different things in clinical psychology, was
Mhm.
just because someone who's been depressed for a while suddenly gets happy, that's the time to be the most worried.
Yes.
That is the time they have made a decision, and that is not necessarily a good thing.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
they
Right.
tend to get happier because they feel like it's almost over.
The weight feels less in that moment because their mind's clear, right? But the decision they make is not one that you would want for them.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess we kind of skipped ahead of the basic premise, but maybe we got there just by accident. But Kirsten Dunst plays a woman getting married. It's a 18-hole golf course, a palatial kind of
Which
estate,
is
right?
important. The 18 holes is important. Like they say
Exactly.
it enough, and then when it shows up later, you're like, oh, got it, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Um, she seems to be very much not present at her wedding, both physically for a lot of it and also mentally. Um,
Which I don't
uh,
blame her. That wedding looked miserable. Like I would hate everyone there.
yeah, that's true.
Her mom is a piece of work. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's the thing, right? Her parents are like they're in their own way, they are both extremely unhelpful.
Yeah.
Um, her dad kind of just simply by just not being there and like kind of making light of things, and her mom by I don't even know,
Doing
just
the
being a terrible.
opposite, doing the complete
Yeah,
opposite.
like yeah, some of the stuff she says to her, it's like, oof. I feel like I've heard stuff like that before. Like the, her mom's just like over it, right? She just doesn't care anymore. She had years of like suffering the dad who's like a clown and the daughter who's depressed and the other daughter who's anxious and like she's just done. Like she's over it. Um, but as the movie goes on, she just starts slowly like kind of ending things, right? Like she ends the marriage right after right after they make their vows and dance, and she's just done, right? She goes and
And she
she's
just
now it's
straight cheats on him in the golf course.
right.
Yeah, we're done. Okay.
That intern or whatever, right? Like she doesn't even care. Um and you see, I think she does a good job, and as much as I hate to give her credit because I hate her, um just kidding. I mean half kidding. Um, she does a good job, I think, of being both present and not present, and carrying that. I think she's the right person for this role. I think she balances that very well.
Yeah, because like when you're depressed and you're trying, for a lot of people, I won't say this is universal, but for a lot of people, the idea of what you need to do, what looks normal, how you're supposed to act. It takes
Mhm.
a lot of energy to do that when you're
Yeah.
depressed, and I think she really does try her hardest. And I mean, at some point you got to feel like, why does she do this? Because obviously everyone can tell and they're not very appreciative of her faking it. But it's like, what is her choices here? Either fake it or don't. But she's hoping to at least make other people okay by faking it. And then by the end of the night, she just doesn't give a shit anymore. Like there is a clear line where she says, you know what, I don't care.
Yeah.
I've done everything I can. No one's
Hmm.
happy, so why do I care?
Hmm.
Like when she finally tells Stellan Skarsgård, who is such an asshole in this movie. For anyone who hasn't seen it, there's a whole thing where he gives a speech at her. That's not the rehearsal. It's the what's the thing after the wedding? The reception. The reception.
Reception, reception. Yeah.
Reception. And he's basically like, it sounds nice at first, like he's bragging on how good of an employee she is, but it's also very obvious he wants her to basically work during her wedding because he wants a tagline for some. I don't know. She's like a design. sort of thing. She's apparently good at getting taglines for people.
Yeah, she's in
And he
market.
wants one, and pretty much the whole night he's pretty much harassing her and trying to guilt her into giving him this one. And finally, by the end of the night, she just tells him how much she despises him. And the
Mhm.
only thing he can muster up to say is this you resigning? Like it's like obviously, like obviously it is.
Right, right. He during the speech he flashes up the ad and asks her for a tagline like as part of his speech. That
Yeah,
just
it's
gets
supposed to
worse
be
from
a quote unquote joke that you can tell is not a quote unquote
yeah.
joke. And
Um,
yeah, and he sends that poor intern basically saying, "Hey, you know that nice salary I gave you? Get me the tagline, or you're going to be homeless."
exactly. And he means it too because he fires him later, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, yeah, he's an asshole. But if he Von Trier calls this his depression trilogy, right? So we're about to see. I guess the next time we meet, we'll see Nymphomaniac, which is the final piece of this.
yeah.
Um, but he's kind of gone through the manic side, right? Of not being able to disassociate or not being able to like separate pleasure and pain.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think he's going, this is more of just like a generalized depression, right? Like it's not probably tied to anything because every character represents like a stressor in her life or something that triggers her in some way, right?
Yeah, I guess you could. I hate to use the word. I'm trying to think of the right words to use, but yeah, like when you take an Antichrist, it's very personal. It's very this is what I'm going through. Where there's almost like a weird altruism to this. Like it's almost like he's speaking about himself and Antichrist, but he's speaking to you with Melancholia. Like
Ooh, okay.
if
Yeah,
you've
I
went
like
through this, this is what it's like. Identify with me because I feel like he got it all out in Antichrist, and now he kind of wants the almost like the grouping. Like, yes, other people have went through this.
yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that. I kind of like that actually. And the films get progressively more beautiful as well, right? So this is the thing about Melancholia is like visually this film is beautiful.
That design, I don't know if you watched anything on it. I'd be curious if you did because I didn't. I didn't get a chance to. Is there anything like
Unfortunately.
how they did the planet thing? Because it's really pretty. I know it's like CG, but it's like really interesting, like how much thought is putting into like how big the planet is and its flyover and things like that. It's like really well thought out.
No, unfortunately, I ran out of time. I just barely got to see the movie
Yeah.
with travel and stuff. But I would love to know it too because he doesn't like CGI, right? So,
Yeah, and he used. I
um,
think the only thing he used in Antichrist, the fox was definitely CG, right? Because it does talk at some point. We didn't really talk about the Chaos Reigns fox, but um,
I I don't
he's
know how
definitely
else.
getting more comfortable with it.
I guess so. If it's stop motion, it's the best stop motion that's ever been recorded. It feels like it's probably CG. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Um,
I mean, you know, if you have these ambitious ideas, this is your choice. Like, I mean, you have this idea. Like, I have no problem with somebody saying, you know what, I'm going to break my CG rule to get this planet in here so I can have like my metaphor for this to properly work. Like, you know, you
yeah.
do what you have to do.
I feel like the more we're talking about him now, because as much as I am growing weary of his movies
Yeah.
because they're all heavy, the more we talk about him, I view him as actually like I've always liked him, but my respect for him is actually kind of going up watching these movies so back to back because I think he has a really good natural kind of innate ability to understand what visuals go with the story well.
Yeah, because like we we talked about an Antichrist, the very nature feel of everything. You know, everything's very grassy, very earthy. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have Melancholia, which is like this extraterrestrial, I guess, for a lack of a better word, this very existential, like it's space type thing. You know, it's away from Earth, it's outer Earth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he made a sci-fi movie, right? It's not the visually speaking, like this could be on par with any good sci-fi film.
Which now that we're talking about it, my girlfriend has never seen a Von Trier movie before I started this. She's watched a couple with me, I think, but the one she had seen is this one. And I kept trying to
Okay.
figure out, I was like, how the hell has she seen this movie or why did she watch it? It's not her normal thing. And I think I just figured it out because I think the Netflix description calls it a disaster film. And she loves disaster movies. So I was like, I bet you. And I was like, no wonder she says she's very conflicted about how she feels about the movie. I was like, yeah, if I was promised a disaster movie, I'd be pissed.
Right after The Rock trying to save San Francisco, you get to this one.
You're like, okay, cool. Like this melodrama is all cool and stuff, but when does Moonfall happen?
Oh man, that's hilarious. And how are they going to like blow up the moon somehow to save it? That's really funny. Um, yeah, the more now that we're talking about it, I think I really, really like Von Trier as a filmmaker. I don't know how to feel about him as a person. Certainly leaning towards him being, uh, he
He's
is always
complicated.
he's complicated, right?
Yeah.
He's always come off as mercurial. So like, is it possible that in his younger years, where he wanted complete control, he had his own studio and was filming something that was purely his vision? He brought in one of the most respected and like intelligent and talented songwriters in the world, and they clashed. Like, yeah, I fully believe that's possible.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's because he's so weird too. Because I think we may have alluded this during that episode, but like usually when you deal with difficult filmmakers, usually you'll be told don't fucking work with them. They're terrible to work for. Get it done once and get it out. But he
Mhm.
works with these people over and over again. There's definitely people he clashes with and they don't work with him again, or they don't
Mhm.
say very
Mhm.
nice things about him. But then you have these
Mhm.
people who obviously think very highly of him and really take up for him as a human being. And it's like, this is the problem with like when we talk about celebrity is when is the person like putting on an act and
Mhm.
when do we see who they really are and when do those mix, when do those contradict? And it's like I'm not gonna sit here and just like hand wave away every controversy I've heard with Lars, but I mean I feel like there's a lot more context that's needed with some of these things. And I'm sure, someone who's worked 40 years with lots of different people, there's been some times he has been a straight fucking asshole.
Exactly.
And it's hard. And he's a difficult person to read because you don't know who the real him is unless I guess you worked with him. Because a lot of these people seem to feel like they know him. And they seem to, I mean, Skarsgård's been working with him since what, the 90s? The
Well,
early
maybe.
90s? And this is
Wait,
now
wait.
2011.
Oh, when did Breaking the Waves comes out? Was it 90?
I think it was 91.
Oh, 91. Okay, fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
then
so
yeah,
I
no.
mean, but you're talking about from 91 to 2011. That is 20 years of
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
working with you repeatedly. And then, now you have what's her
But
name?
Udo Kier, right?
Charlotte.
Udo Kier's been with him the whole time.
Yeah, you look at him and then, of course a lot of people bring up a lot of how he's with women, but he's had a lot of the same women work in his films over and over again. I think what's her name? Oh, we just said it. Gainsbourg.
Ginsburg? Hmm.
Yeah, like I mean, she's going to work with him from Antichrist, and she might be in Jack Built too. No, she's not. But I mean, she works in the next 4 films he makes,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I mean, it's like obviously there's something. And I mean, I read an interview where Kirsten Dunst was very happy to work with him. She had no issues with him. She thought he was very. I think she even specifically said that he's a very sensitive person who loves women, and it's like you get such contradictory information about him and it becomes impossible to know what's really going on.
I mean, I don't want to oversimplify a very complicated thing that we know nothing about,
Yeah.
but it's possible that both are true, right? Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
I,
the same.
I, I think that's a lot of there's truths in everything being said.
Yeah, like I'm not the same man I was at 40, that I am at 42 than I was at 25. Like, I wouldn't say I was aggressively sexist
Yeah, and I mean it's
at
not to
25.
hand wave away and say, oh well, boys will be boys either. But at the same
Mm,
time, you have two people who hated each other who are going to give the worst versions of each other.
mhm.
And you have to realize that. And that's not to be that's unfair. However, I'm not even going to try to say your name again because I'm going to screw it up.
Sure.
However, she feels is legitimate. And I'm not even going to say well, the way she said it didn't happen. It absolutely could have. It could have absolutely be 100% the truth,
Mhm.
but it's hard to know. And you're listening to two people who obviously hate each other try to talk
Yeah.
about this. And it's so frustrating as an outsider because usually I try to ignore this stuff because I want what's the context of the film. But with Von Trier, his life is a lot of the context.
Right.
Like it's hard to talk
You're
about
right.
Antichrist without saying, yeah, this is what he's feeling. This is what he's trying to get across. It's hard to talk about Melancholia without saying, yeah, this is what he's feeling. This is what he's trying to get across.
Well, and I think the thing that's becoming more apparent in his later life is that he has demons, if you want
Yeah.
to use that term. Like the guy's just he's conflicted. Like he's got depression. He has outbursts of manic episodes. He's been in therapy for years. Like, could he have fully been unhinged with Bjork and been a monster with her? Absolutely. And could he have also gotten therapy and realized that he can't be like that? Yeah, sure, right? Like
Yeah.
people do that, right? So everything could be true. I just think if we set aside all that stuff for a second, he is capable of making films that I think have an incredible emotional depth to them, and one that I think if you go in with a strong bias against him, you might dismiss some of what he's doing. Or some people say it's too on the nose, and I think that might actually be a fair critique. It's not for me, but I mean the metaphor in Melancholia, it's not like it's subtle.
Well, I mean, I've
Um,
always used the example. Sometimes you need a scalpel, sometimes you need a sledgehammer. And he
yeah.
is in the belief that a lot of times you need a sledgehammer.
He only has different size sledgehammers, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm more looking forward to Nymphomaniac now that I've seen Antichrist and Melancholia again.
I
I
want to
was
say so, but and we'll get to that's one we're definitely gonna have to do spoilers for because it's the end of part two that soured me so much on that movie. And I don't know how you haven't seen it, have you?
randomly I've only seen the first half of part one.
Wild. Yeah, it's a fascinating movie. Yeah, so we're gonna get to that, and I guess to get back on track to Melancholia because I feel like there's a lot to say, but also it's one of those ones where it's kind of like Europa, where I feel like it's like just go watch it. Like
Yep.
I don't want to
Yep.
tell you too much because I think there's so many good things. So I will tell you, in case you were like a vampire fanatic, there are at least 5 people in this movie who have played vampires, and it fascinated me because
Okay, Kirsten Dunst,
yeah, she yep.
Defoe,
Which what was the last one you said?
Defoe.
Defoe's not in Melancholia.
Oh no, he's not in Melancholia.
No,
But the dude, the 24 guy.
Skarsgård. Oh, Kiefer Sutherland. Yep, Lost Boys.
Yeah. Oh, Skarsgård. When did Skarsgård play a vampire?
He played in True Blood.
The TV show?
Yeah, the TV show. He was one of the main characters
Oh,
of True Blood.
oh, nice,
Um,
nice, nice. Okay.
Udo Kier played him and played
Oh
Dracula,
yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
then John Hurt played in Only Lovers Left Alive.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet. Okay.
That's a Jarmusch film, and you haven't seen it. I'm shocked.
And, is that one of his new ones?
I think it was 2013. That is him, isn't it? I'm not crazy. I'm gonna
No, no,
say
no.
that. I'm
It's
gonna
his.
feel real dumb.
No, 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 no. It's his. It's his.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. He's a vampire in that. So I was just sitting there watching. And I was like, why are there so many vampire actors in this? Like it's
just
probably the dumbest thing to focus on, but that's all I could know. I was like, oh, there's Kiefer Sutherland. Okay.
sneaky vampire film.
Yeah, like, and I do want to like I do want to actually talk about Kiefer Sutherland because I think this is such a different role for him, and he's really
Yeah,
good in it. This
yeah.
is honestly like more of a Donald Sutherland type role,
Mm, mm,
and
mm,
he's
mm.
really good as it because usually he's kind of done his own thing for years and years and years, but this is him playing almost like a family man, and it's really strange to me
Yeah, like
because
he cares for Gainsbourg.
yeah,
And
I mean, and like I mean, he becomes kind of a he my girlfriend when she came in is like, yeah, Kiefer Sutherland's an asshole in this movie, and she's talking about because how his character ends, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of fair too.
yeah, yeah, he's imperfect. Like I think that there seems to be like two people in this movie. There's the people that are suffering, and the people that are fed up and just be like, I can't like there's the world's literally about to end. Like I don't have time for your depression. I'm sorry, and like they just bail or whatever,
Well,
right?
it's like that scene towards the end, and I mean, look, you know where this movie's going. We talked about it plenty of times about him going to the logical end. If you really think the planet is going to fly by and everything's going to be happy, I don't think you know who the director is. So
Right.
we're just going to pretend you would have already known this at the end. Plus, I think it tells you pretty much straight up at the beginning. Like I think that
Yeah.
there's a CGI part that shows the Earth and the it colliding, so it pretty much tells you straight up it's going to happen.
No, they do that.
Um,
They visually walk through the whole movie and then they show the movie.
yeah, yeah. So it's like okay, so yeah, doesn't feel like spoiler, but there's that part where her and her sister are sitting there talking, and her sister
Huh?
obviously I feel the worst for her. I really do because you're really talking to somebody who is not ready for this. You have
Right.
Kirsten Dunst's character. She's accepted it. She's fine with it. She's cool with it. It's gonna happen. Oh well. It's honestly like a weight lifted off her shoulder. Her sister is the complete opposite. She's not knowing how to deal with this because even though she has her own problems, the idea of death does not comfort her at all. Like it is not something she wants to deal with. So she tells her like, can we just like go take some pills and some wine and go out on the terrace? And Kirsten Dunst is just like, no, that's a stupid idea. And it's so cold, but you get it. Like you get like this is weirdly what people kind of like about good disaster movies is the drama of that filter is gone because what's the point of having a filter when none of you are going to be there much longer.
Right, 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 right.
And it's an odd thing. It's people acting almost outrageous but in a logical way.
Right. Random question for you that you just triggered this idea for me. So Von Trier has now made a disaster film. He's made a horror film. He's made and the house that Jack built is pretty much a straight horror film, right?
Yeah, I mean it's got this weird like crime element to it too because it's a serial killer story, but yeah, I would say it's probably the closest to a straight horror movie.
Okay. And I don't know. I want to wait to classify Nymphomaniac till I see it again because I hated the first part of what I saw. But anyways,
Wonderful.
uh,
The next episode is gonna be so much fun.
then he's made a comedy.
Yeah.
He's made a musical.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I'm just kind of going backwards here. Europa, what would that be? He's made like a war film.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if I'm Von Trier, it's very dangerous to speak for him, but I almost wonder if he's doing. It feels like he's doing this on purpose. It feels like he's trying to kind of go through and make like these different genres, right? But like do it in something that's like fully his.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we talked about towards the beginning with Kubrick, where Kubrick made, I think his goal was to make the best versions of these
Yeah.
genres, where Von Trier is, I'm going to make my version of these things.
Yeah, right, right, right.
Whether it's, and it kind of goes back to Five Obstructions, where he talks about it's not about making it good. It's about experiencing it. It's about doing it. Whether or not it's good, if it's good or not does not matter.
Yeah,
Five
yeah.
Obstructions is one I'm glad we watched because I feel like it like opened up this weird locking key with him and his psyche of how he looks at things.
I totally agree. No behind the scenes feature is going to give you anywhere close to what that movie gave you on who he is. Totally agree with that. It's almost like if there's a movie where you're like, what movie should I start with? I almost think people should start with that just to kind of get into his mindset a little bit. Um, I'll wait to do the ranking and stuff until next time, I guess, when we finish everything. But I don't have anything else to say on Melancholia. I am my respect for him as a again purely as a filmmaker is growing as we go through this because I almost wish it's weird to say I feel sad that he's misunderstood because he's kind of an asshole, but like
And some of it he's done to himself. Like, I mean, you
totally,
can't take away his part in this, but some of it has been justified, his response to people.
yeah,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
mean, it cut the knife cuts both ways.
Yeah, like the whole Hitler thing, which I don't even know what movie wasn't that from
It
Melancholia?
was Melancholia. Yeah, and that's one where I think when you talk about somebody, especially now, we talked about how much somebody is depressed, where they just
Yeah,
don't give a shit. That's exactly what that like. I used to think it was him trolling, which I think is still part of it, but I think some of it's just not giving a fuck and just saying things. Like it's almost
yeah,
like just who cares? I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I don't. No matter what the reading is, I don't believe what he says because it doesn't make sense with him. I don't think he's some weird Hitler sympathizer. I don't get that in anything else because that is literally the only evidence anyone has for it, and I feel like it's a almost exasperated, like just not caring and just
I
saying
would,
whatever you want to.
yeah, I would love to go back. I meant to watch the whole clip before this. I forgot to do that. I've never seen the whole clip as far as like, kind of
He's just
like
talking
what
about
happened.
Wagner because they were asking about the use of Wagner
Yeah,
in Melancholia.
yeah.
And he just starts talking about how he feels like he understands it. This is the thing. You cannot take that sentence seriously. Like I feel like I understand Hitler. It's like, oh God. Like it doesn't
Uh,
matter how you finish that sentence. It's not good.
yeah, he did it to himself a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, God, man. I know you're probably not serious. I hope you're not. Like, one thing I feel like I would, if I were to find out he said, yeah, I really, really, believe all these things. I feel like it would like completely take out my reading of like 90% of his films. But like, I have no idea who this guy is. I thought I kind of understood him, sort of. Now I don't feel like I understand him at all.
No, I actually feel the same way. I think he is a surprisingly empathetic person, and the more, at least in the way that he writes. And I think it seems like based on these last two films, it comes from a place of him exploring what's going on in his own mind. And it just makes him both able to write very beautiful representations of like struggle, but also makes him kind of a troll at times and kind of like he doesn't care, and which is not great, for PR, but
I feel like
people,
it's almost like his exposure therapy, right? Like this is what these last two have been. His version of
yeah,
exposure therapy, just to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
figure it out, understand
And
yourself better. I mean, I guess, you wait this long, at least you're trying to figure it out.
yeah, it's interesting. I guess again, I don't want to say too much because I haven't seen Jack, but people really seem to like that movie. And if you look at some of the greats, Fellini, Kurosawa, like if you look at these guys like Rossellini, their career sort of whimpered out. They, like people don't talk about Fellini's last film much, or like they don't talk about Madedeo from Kurosawa. It's okay. I rank it high because I find it very sweet and sentimental, but like it's certainly not a masterpiece for him. Like a lot of directors, as they get into their older age, they sort of, they just kind of like peter out a little bit. But I feel like in a weird way, he's getting stronger with each one of these movies.
Yeah, it is honestly kind of relieving. And like I said, I appreciate the handheld stuff. I appreciate the idea that,
Mhm.
things don't have to look cinematic to be cinema. Like I think that's really cool. I was honestly pretty thankful to rewatch Antichrist and Melancholy and be like, oh, these look like real movies. And I'm very happy. Like it's still his style. It still feels like him, but it feels like him not just doing the same thing. Cause I feel like I'd get a little sick of it by now if we kept going back to the handheld stuff.
Oh, totally. No, totally.
And he will do that a little bit. Like I'll be curious to see what you think when we watch Jack, because that probably feels a little bit more traditional for him, but still, it's a nice balance from what I remember. Now it's been a few years since I've seen it, but I remember it being kind of a cool balance between those. So it'll be
Well,
interesting.
I'm bracing myself for next week, but or next 2 weeks, whatever. But
Well, thank you everybody
thank,
for sticking around with us while we get through, what is this, like the 12th the 12th movie we've talked about from him. So
yeah.
thanks everybody.
No, it's great. Thanks for these good discussions. I've really enjoyed these. I don't know. We don't hear a lot from people that listen. I hope people are enjoying these. I'm really enjoying going through them with you. And um, if Adam is listening, Adam, Melancholia is one you could watch. Wait, I think
Yeah, I
he's
think
already
he would
seen
be.
it.
Yeah, I think he said he had seen that one.
Yeah,
I
Boss
would
of It
not
All.
recommend Antichrist to him.
No, no.
No. Boss of It All, he might like. I could see him
Boss of It
like
All.
that.
Whether or not he likes it, I'm just thinking of like the Adam scale of like, could he watch it or not? Boss of
Yeah,
It All,
yeah.
Melancholia, easily watch, right? Um, Europa, easily watch. That might be it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like if he wants, I don't know. I could see him really liking Five
Oh,
Obstructions just because
yeah.
of like the experimental nature of it. I think he would really appreciate. Oh, I did read an interview from a review from Ebert that where he called Antichrist very Bergman. If Bergman killed himself, went to hell, and came back and made that movie. And I was like,
Uh,
that is a wild description. I'm pretty sure it was Ebert. If it wasn't, it was somebody like it was when I was reading the different reviews. He was the one above it. So, but still, it was a hilarious review, and I'm like, I almost want to recommend it to Adam just because somebody compared it to Bergman.
what's the horror movie? Hour of the Wolf, right? From
Yeah,
Bergman, the one that's
yeah, that and Virgin Spring, I would say, are the two that you could classify.
yeah. Oh man, it's funny. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
See you.